The books. Alright, I guess this is it. Good morning, everyone. I'm Will, tattooer at Chiefmaker and Veldhoen in Amsterdam, and welcome to the beautiful Solomon Islands. So yeah, I guess this is it. I normally prefer to be behind the camera instead of in front of it, slightly uncomfortable. It's probably the easiest way to tell a story for a large audience, so I'll just have to deal with it. First of all, I'd like to thank every single one of you for the huge amount of support during this project. I really appreciate it. So many of you have reached out throughout the last weeks, months, and years to ask what this project is actually about and what I am doing. I prefer to answer everyone in person, and I really like to take my time to do so. It's a long and a complex story. I'm forced to keep it very short, so I'll be posting a couple of videos throughout the next days, so you get a good view of what's going on, and I'll talk you through and show some footage along the way, what's coming up, what I've done in the past, what I'm doing right now, why I'm doing it, or why we are doing it, and hopefully what will happen in the future. I'll pin these videos on my Instagram profile so you can rewatch them in case you want to. Thank you. I figured I would start off this series best by explaining what has actually happened before I got to be in this wonderful place as we speak right now. So I'll walk you through it. As a tattooer, I always had a passion for indigenous and Pacific tattooing symbolism. And while tattooing, I figured I wanted to learn more about these cultures and the meaning behind all the patterns I was using. I had this idea that if I wanted to become a poet, if I wanted to become a writer, I need to learn the alphabet. And in order to do so, you start at the very core of the subject and then build your way up. So I decided to dive deep into it. I was gonna take a map, look at the Pacific, pin a location, study it for about 6 weeks or so, and then move on to the next subject. So I'd covered probably the whole Pacific in a year. And here we are, 5 years later, in the Solomon Islands, stuck on the first islands I came across. But it was no coincidence. Some islands in the Pacific are well documented. They already have a great tattoo revival. I chose to go for the lesser known islands, the islands that have not been studied so much, and the islands I think we could still find something new. So I was really looking forward to it. There are two main reasons why I did it. One, I wanted to see what was there to be found. And two, the more remote you go, the less contact there has been with the West. So I would guess the more authentic the culture, the tattooing patterns, traditions still might be. And pretty soon I found out that there was actually quite a lot that covered the subject, but it was never labeled as such. So finding things specifically about tattooing on the Solomon Islands was like looking for a needle in a haystack, which has led me to be in archives, museums, scroll through hundreds, thousands of pictures to find evidence of tattooing. Man, I spent so many hours, so many days trying to find stuff. And when you do, it's so exciting. It's so wonderful to see something unique maybe people haven't seen in years, decades. And what I decided to do with everything I found is that I was gonna redraw every single design I could find, keep it as close to the original as possible, label it, try and find out the meaning, see where it fits on the body, and simply make sure that it doesn't get lost in time once again. And the result was I ended up with a huge book, and I basically did it for myself just to try and learn more about the subject I'm working on. I feel obligated to do so because I'm working with other people's cultures. It's a sign of respect, I believe. It's the least I can do. But here I was with all this stuff, too important not to share. The first thing I wanted to do is make sure that this information got back to the people to who it belongs. So throughout the years, I built up a huge group of contacts, local associates who have helped me not only to find sources, explanations, but I could also deliver some stuff they've never seen because most is kept in European collections. So it's new for them. And another thing is, the more I was speaking to people, the more people saw that it was actually something very important, and it would be a shame if it would just be locked in my closet. And I have to say, I sort of agree with it. Not necessarily that I want to share all my findings. It's more that I think these people deserve way more recognition within the tattoo community. This is by far one of the most special places. And because it is so remote, it is one of those places where tattooing has existed within the Pacific for the longest time. I mean, there's been recordings of tattooing on the Solomon Islands up until the late 70s. Even now, I found people that still wear the authentic tattoo designs on their body. It's still alive, it's still here, and if we don't capture it now, it's gonna be lost. So yeah, we're currently working on making this into a book so I can share it with all of you. I had one condition to do it under, that is if I could show the book first to the people themselves, go to the Solomon Islands, discuss this project, see what the people actually think of it, ask for their approval to show this to the rest of the world as well, and see if we could come up with new things, either show them new things or they could show me new meanings, explanations, and together we could maybe revive the lost art or the art that is on the verge of being extinct. I mean, one of the most important things is to safeguard it for the future generations. We've had so much fun so far. Every single day we've been working together, trying to find out new things, place designs on the body, tattooing all the time. So yeah, here we are, doing what I always wanted to do. Tattooing is still very much alive. I think without a doubt, the second most asked question is, why do I actually do this? So first off, I'd like to state the obvious, of course, which is that there's absolutely no financial gain in this for me. To put it very simple, it's mainly an act of passion. I wake up every morning truly excited about the subject. Can't wait to start work, learn new things every single day, and to see how far we can take this. And that's probably the main driving force behind all of this. This type of tattooing is the most pure form of the craft. I just feel some sort of magic within it, and I want to capture it while I still can. And I think indigenous knowledge is very important. Obviously, in the West, we have not done so well, in my opinion. There are a lot of people we can learn something from, and indigenous communities certainly are one of them. While doing this research, I actually noticed that there was quite a lot documented in the early 1900s, late 1800s, and then up until the 70s, we had people like Dan Tomei documenting tattooing on the Solomon Islands, and after that, it slowly started to disappear. I found something very special. It was still thriving until very recently. It was now or never. I felt the need to come to the Solomon Islands because if we don't do it now, it's probably gone forever. Another big reason to do this is that the Solomon Islands are actually sinking. Due to climate change and sea level rise, some of these atolls are slowly but surely disappearing, which means that these people will lose their land and it will have a big impact on their culture, tradition, and identity. These tattoos are a big part of their identity, and it's probably one of the only things that they can carry around with them while unfortunately these islands disappear. And just on a personal note, I think culture is very important. Feels to me that having a lack of culture really disturbs a society. So if we can prevent other people from losing theirs, maybe there's a lot to gain. Why me? I guess it just happened. It's just something I'm very passionate about. I feel that's right. And I think it's just probably the easiest way for me to reach a bigger audience through Instagram. And I definitely have the easiest access to resources, visit museums, archives, use the internet, and combine everything we can to make this all happen. It's me showing this to you, but I want to emphasize there are by now a lot of people involved. I have a lot of local associates working very, very hard next to me. This is the only way that I can help, at least, to safeguard it for future generations. It's just my way to contribute in a positive way. Yeah, that's basically it. Last part before we get into the action is the question, why did I actually choose the Solomon Islands? To find that out, we'll need some maps. Let's go, check it out. The Solomon Islands stretch out over a huge area. It consists of close to 1,000 islands, of which nearly 150 are inhabited. In the west they border with Papua New Guinea, in the south we've got Australia, and in the east they crumble into the vast Pacific. And even though the vast majority of these islands are Melanesian, I've noticed during my research that most of the tattooing was going on in the Polynesian outlayers within this region. Polynesian outliers are islands located on the very edge of the Polynesian Triangle. Let's have a closer look at this Polynesian Triangle. In this triangle, pretty much all the islands that are Polynesian, then we have Melanesia and Micronesia. Another example of how Europeans absolutely love to categorize every single thing in the world, because these are borders that never really existed. So you'll see the Solomon Islands right over here, surrounded by a dozen of Polynesian islands. But it's the gateway into the Pacific, so a combination of Micronesian, Melanesian and Polynesian cultures all combining here. While Europe slowly but surely infiltrated the Pacific, these Polynesian outliers were safeguarded from Western influences. The art in this area is just so incredibly beautiful. Check it out, Google it, buy a book. You will absolutely not regret it. And while doing so, also check out some tattooing artists from these islands. I've covered Antung Java, Anuta on this side, Tikopia, Santa Cruz area, Santa Ana and Santa Catalina, Sikayana, Langa Langa, and last but not least, Rennell and Bellona. So we see a trend in which most people move away from their small islands, making their way towards the capital. By now, of some of these islands, actually the vast majority already lives in Honiara. So you'll find more people of these islands actually in the capital than on the island itself. I decided this would be the place that I would do most of my work from, on the island of Guadalcanal. So what does Honiara actually look like? Well, here's some footage. Honiara consists of nothing more than just one big road running through town. It's really hard to consider it a city, it's more like a small village. But within this small area, we find over 85 different ethnic groups, all with their cultures, traditions. So although the city is not very beautiful to look at, the people certainly are. Some islands are just so remote I wouldn't be able to reach them within the limited time frame I have. Although from most of these islands there are communities within Honiara, it's not always easy to reach them. So throughout the years I had the most contact with people from Antung Java and Rennell and Bellona. Antung Java because that's the island I just did the most research in. It speaks the most to my heart. And then Rennell and Bellona because most of my friends are from these islands. It's still the tattoo culture that is the most alive. And that has to do with the fact that in the 70s, Professor Tickle wrote a small book about tattooing on these islands while it was still being practiced, and basically was one of the only people to document tattooing on the Solomon Islands. And because he captured this, tattooing within this community kept on living. It survived. And now when you walk down the street, I think most of the people from Bellona you'll actually see are tattooed with traditional designs. And to make sure that all the other islands can do so, I try to make this book. If they want to use it, they can. If not, absolutely fine as well. At least it's there. And another reason I focus on this island is because most of the other places, tattooing has actually already died out. So there wouldn't be much to be found. Everything I got is in old books. There's no tattooing anymore. Meanings are lost. Communities just would not be interested to work with me. Became very Christian, so they condemned tattooing. Therefore, I try to use my energy wisely and focus. There's more than enough to be done already. I'm pleased to finally share with you some of my findings while still being in the midst of it. Let's get straight to it. To start off, visiting a large variety of places and people was top priority. The most important thing to either share or gather as much information as possible was to reach a large audience. That way I could get a better understanding of how these patterns or customs, like making traditional ink, came to be. So one of the first things I wanted to do is share all my findings. They consist of authentic patterns and designs which I collected over the past 5 years from libraries, museums, photographs, archives. While some of the people I work with are familiar with the designs, to others they are completely new or nothing more than a vague memory from the symbols once portrayed on the bodies of their grandparents. And the next target was definitely to try and document whatever there might still be left. That's on the body, but also in the memory of the elders. As I didn't expect much to be found, I was more than thrilled to see that there were still some people left with traditional tattoos. Their information is of invaluable importance to the project, as these are the last remaining survivors of a cultural practice on the verge of being lost.
I interviewed them about their experiences and the meanings and rituals behind certain symbolism. And this turned out to be a great way to learn more about what I had done in the past and to see if it actually matched with the real deal.
And although most of the research and preparations were done by me back in Europe, this is the part where the help of the entire team comes in. Special thanks goes out to Q, Sao Q, Ballant, and George. At this stage, we took what we had gathered and put it into practice.
That means we tried to figure out on how we could fill in the missing pieces. Some could easily be solved and were even part of the everyday cultural knowledge, and others required a lot more work. We tried to make sure that we got the correct names, placements, and oral history that comes either with the design or with the practice. And for those that we couldn't figure out ourselves, we decided to gather elders to sit around and volunteer on which we could draw the designs as they recalled them from memory. A long and tough process, but one that was incredibly rewarding and helpful, giving insight to both me and them.
As I received so much love and support from the people, I tried to give back wherever I could. That means I tried to teach some of the guys about tattooing techniques, materials, and a safe work environment, while with the kids we focused on cultural revival projects to secure this knowledge for future generations. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Can't wait to see you in the next one when we dive into the extensive tattooing that has been going on right here in the Solomon Islands. Over a period of 6 weeks, we tried to reach out and help over 7 different island groups with the preservation, documentation, and revival of their tattooing traditions, as this cultural heritage is on the verge of disappearing. In order to make this happen, I've put together an entire team. By now, we are with many, but none of this would have been possible without the help of our tattooers from Bellona, Q, Sao Q, and Bolland. The amount of support and enthusiasm we've received has been simply overwhelming. We've been tattooing every single day for 7 days a week, often working in day and night shifts, finding rest wherever we could, just to help out the amount of people interested in reviving their patterns. And although we did plenty of smaller work, we tried to mainly focus on completing large-scale projects. Our aim was to keep the traditional use and placements of these full-body compositions alive. The only time we would actually get a break from tattooing was when we were conducting fieldwork. This might be the remaking or reviving of tools, traveling to the outer islands, or go deep into the jungles to find a specific tree of which the traditional ink was made. We even found this beetle on which the next tattoo is inspired. And while being on the road, we were pleased to see and document the last proof of a once thriving cultural practice and identity. With the three of us working full time, it's hard to keep track of how many tattoos we actually did, but I'm pleased to share with you at least some of the results. While some tattoos were done in one session, others took weeks to complete. Most of the tattoo designs are a combination of the information I've gathered throughout the years and the personal knowledge and memory from elders within the communities. Although I funded most of the project myself, thanks to some sponsorships and kind donations, we were able to offer all these tattoos to the people for free. The only rule me and my colleagues came up with in order to stimulate a revival is that the chosen patterns and placements would have to be authentic. We did so many tattoos, it was impossible to document or show all of them, so I handpicked a couple of stories which I found interesting to share. Take for instance the story of Fraser and Apopu, which are both sons of chiefs from Ontong Java, a remote set of islands which are devastatingly affected by the rising sea levels. Being forced to relocate, a sudden shift in priorities and ways of living have left their mark. So we stepped in and we tried to help wherever we could, as they clearly still recognized and honored their traditions and past. They became the first in over 70 years to wear their distinct patterns once again. And as they are chiefs to be, their markings greatly impacted the revival. By now, already over a dozen have followed in their footsteps. Ella is another great example. In the beginning, the majority of tattoos we did were on men.
But thanks to some brave women, we initiated a sudden change and shift. She was the first of by now many women who have started to complete their full body tattoos from Bellona, which their grandmothers once used to wear. And last but not least, of course, we always try to do our utter best to create a safe work environment. But tattooing from a remote Pacific island brings along its challenges. But most of all, an endless amount of beauty.
Thank you for watching. It's been an absolute blast. I really appreciate all the support. This won't be the end. This is just the beginning, and wait to take you along on the next ride, and hope to see you soon. Alright, that's it. Back in the Solomons we are with many, but from home I run this project as a one-man show. The results and enthusiasm have been simply overwhelming. Where this is going in the future I honestly don't know. But by liking and sharing our videos you can help us reach the largest possible audience, which we can use to create a platform with regards to donations, sharing updates, and simply give these people, my friends, the recognition they deserve. Thank you.